Hey guys, Leanna here, doing the weekly YouTube video. Trying to stick to a more weekly schedule, moving up to more on YouTube. New Year's resolution, trying not to neglect my YouTube channel so much. Because I realized I have 945 followers or subscribers, and how the hell did that happen? But you'll notice my hair is kind of fuzzy because I just washed it, and it tends to go when it's washed, and there's only so much I can do. But today is also Bell Let's Talk Day. This is being recorded on January 28th, which is Bell Let's Talk, which means you text and you tweet, and 5 cents from everyone goes to mental health initiatives. So I wanted to talk about mental health and gaming. Because gaming is what I do, and I try to tie it in. Because I don't want to go off on too many tangents, because then people who subscribe to this channel for GameStop are like, oh, why is she talking about this? You guys already put up with my cat videos enough. So, yeah, big topic, gaming and mental health. Anybody who says that the gaming industry has historically been good when it comes to mental health is trying to sell you something. I mean, we've got the crunch period that inherently is not good mental health wise. It's not good physical health wise. I've heard horror stories from devs, a lot of them who have, left the business because their gallbladders acted up, or their liver failed, or their kidney failed, or something like that, because we're in this crazy crunch, eating fast food and not sleeping properly, and some vital organ gave out on them. So that ain't good. The crunch period in gaming is something that really, really concerns me. Because who in their right mind signs up for that? I guess some people enjoy the thrill, the excitement of, oh my god, gotta get it done. But it's avoidable. My job as a producer is to avoid stuff like that. So you have to wonder why it happens quite so often. Obviously, some things are unforeseen, but, why is somebody's gallbladder cacking because of a video game? That doesn't make a ton of sense. Anyway, so we have to address that sort of sense of game-life balance. That's work-life balance for some people, but game-life balance. I had somebody really, really passionate about video game addiction on my Twitter feed today, and that's a sensitive one. There was a period of time in my life, the game was Super Mario 3, where I wouldn't sleep. I'd play Super Mario 3, and I wouldn't interact with people. I'd play Super Mario 3, and everything was Super Mario 3. When you're giving up things that are required to live for a video game, we'd call that an addiction now. I know in my case what it was is trying to avoid, a rotten childhood, and situations where I didn't feel like going out and interacting with people were safe. There were a lot of negative potential things that could happen going out and talking to people. So I played a game, because games are predictable, and as you play the game and you get better, you're rewarded, and so on and so forth. You get those positive reinforcements that unfortunately are few and far between in life. We give these false things to kids, but the older you get, the closer you get to adulthood, the more life starts smacking you in the face, and those those positive indicators, those indicators that you're on the right track, become less and less. And I don't think that's got anything to do with games. I think it's got everything to do with the way our hyper competitive, dog eat dog, every person for themselves society works. The idea that anybody gets anywhere on their own is a myth. It's a myth, and anybody who tries to convince you that you can do anything major, anything world-changing on your own, it's just, the system is not designed for lone wolves. And people market that idea that one person can do amazing things totally on their own, but it's it's a complete myth. I mean, if that were true, then, the armed forces would not be structured the way they are. The armed forces are all about teamwork, and being part of your company, being part of your unit, and working together with your fellow soldiers or your fellow specialists and getting the job done together. Whereas, in the world, it's all about who gets credit. Who gets credit for this project, or who gets credit for this idea? What a dumb thing. But that eventually, if you don't have that killer instinct, you get sort of further and further behind, and it's not worth the fight. I mean, it's super lame to when someone steals your idea. What do you do? What do you do when somebody steals your idea? The only thing you can really do is come up with another idea. And that sometimes happens, that doesn't. Creativity's not a machine. So that's another important thing to remember with games, is they are creative. They go through a ton of iterations. The sheer amount of work in video games is astounding. So it really amazes me when people just go, it sucks. Because most of the time it's absolutely not true. If a game's not the greatest thing they've ever seen, some people just go, it sucks. Gone Home sucks. Why? Because it's only 2 hours long and there's no shooty. Gone Home is a good 2-hour experience. The Stanley Parable is a cool half-hour experience. I really enjoyed that game, but this whole thing it's not a game. You have to remember, whenever you lob a bit of nasty at a product, there are people behind making that product, and just because you didn't like it doesn't give you the right to say it's bad. Now, people are well used to being told their stuff is bad. But being told what's bad isn't necessarily the best, the most useful form of criticism. If somebody says, I like this, I didn't like this, like, okay, well, they like this. Now we know what direction to go. Because every time you say something bad, it just shuts off a door. Don't do this. But I'm sure you can imagine, with the millions of people who play games, when people get feedback, somebody doesn't like everything. And I think responding only to negatives cuts off an important part of the process, which is, another thing happened to me today with Let's Talk, and somebody said they felt like Grand Theft Auto 5 destigmatized going to a psychiatrist because of the cutscenes involving Michael and his psychiatrist. Now, I didn't get that message from Grand Theft Auto 5 at all. I thought it made a mockery of psychotherapy, and I didn't like that part of the game. I thought it was snide and contemptuous, and I thought it would push people away from therapy because, spoiler alert, the doctor turns out to be a charlatan who is only trying to pump Michael for money, and then he's going to run away and Dr. Phil it and sell Michael's story to, a TV network, and then you can, hunt him down and kill him before he escapes. But someone else had a different reaction to that. And I'm like, that guy's reaction to it is no less valid than mine. So I didn't argue with him. I didn't argue with him. I just let that stand, because that's what it meant to him. Now, he could have been trolling. I don't know. I don't care. I think it's cool if somebody feels like going to the psychiatrist is less stigmatized because it was in Grand Theft Auto. Awesome. I don't have to have had that impact myself to say that's positive. If that guy was being sincere, that's absolutely positive. That wasn't that hard. And I find it very strange, the number of people who are like, I support mental health initiatives, or I support this, or I am against harassment, or I'm all for inclusivity. And then they make life as difficult as possible for people that aren't like them. And let's face it, the challenge in dealing with issues collectively, and dealing with issues of self-esteem and mental health and validation and agency, and of course all this stuff is tied together. The challenge is not validating people like you. The challenge is in validating people who are not like you, or at least not actively invalidating people who are not like you. And there was another story that came out today that cosplayer at MagFest, which is, I'm going to get this wrong, I believe a Boston area video game show. But they were subject to negative comments, verbal harassment at MagFest for cosplaying as Vivian James, the Gamergate mascot. And, you know, if let's take out the Gamergate Association for a minute, because if you follow me, it's really not valid. Someone decided to hurl verbal abuse at another human being for a costume. It doesn't matter what the costume was. I don't care if they showed up dressed like the devil. You know, people show up to Anime North, an anime convention near me, dressed like Pedo Bear, which is, first of all, a 4chan meme, second of all, you know, a thing connected to pedophiles. They don't get verbally abused for that. Everybody sort of gets the joke. No matter what you feel about Gamergate does not give you the right to hurl abuse at somebody because of they decided to dress like Vivian James. So freaking what? Like, really? So freaking what? Even if you think that Gamergate is the most villainous organization on the planet, which is silly, but some people do, people are allowed to dress as villains. It's just a costume. Like, cosplay is this really misunderstood thing that people think it's all about ego, and it's all about looking good, and it's all about getting attention. No, not really. I mean, is it about attention? Yeah. But it's about drawing a different kind of attention. So it's experimenting with self and experimenting with performative self. And, you know, people were apparently assuming this woman was a man. I right now cannot tell if this was a transgendered woman or a cisgendered woman because people were calling them a man, and I'm completely confused. But they went on Twitter to say, oh, it's a Vivian James cosplayer. Who asked you? I mean, this is part of the reason there is so much, you know, depression, and there is so much anxiety, and so many people are on pills, is because our community is collapsing. The very people that we're supposed to have something in common with because we have a common interest are deciding to be abusive over, the only word I can use, the Yiddish word is chazarai. Nonsense. Chazarai is sort of like cluttered nonsense. Like, it's not even important nonsense. It's just nonsense. Imagine a whole bunch of Skylanders spread out all over your house made of nonsense. That's chazarai. But this is something we got to get serious about in gaming, because there is a lot of mental illness among the gaming community, because a lot of mental illness in the general population, 1 in 5 people is going to experience a mental or mood disorder in their lifetime. Or it could be this year. It's an astounding statistic. 1 in 5 people, 20%. And there seems to be an awful lot of people in gaming who use games to not necessarily get therapy or treat their condition, but at least escape the symptoms of it for a while. And it's completely counterintuitive that you would pay to go to an event that's supposed to be about happy and have a whole bunch of people act like assholes. This grow a thicker skin stuff, I mentioned this in my last video, it's this grow a thicker skin stuff rearing its ugly head again. No, people don't pay money to be abused by other attendees. That's just nonsense. You're heckling a stranger. You're heckling a stranger. You don't know their situation. You don't know if, you know, they're wearing that costume as a joke, or if it is something they sincerely believe. I mean, God, this whole Gamergate, anti-Gamergate, Kotaku in action, Gamergazi thing, it's become the Hatfields and the McCoys. I mean, we've even gone past the Democrats and the Republicans right now, because the Democrats and the Republicans, at least on paper, every so often need to get something done. You know, this blood feud that is all over gaming right now. I mean, there was a whole thing, I don't know if he ended up speaking, but why the hell is Arthur Chu speaking at MagFest? He's not even a games writer. He weighed in on a controversy, and now all of a sudden he's a guest at gaming conventions. Well, that's taking a spot away from somebody who actually really loves games. And we need to get back to that enthusiast perspective. I'm very happy to see the escapist making the shift to enthusiast press instead of, as they called it, curmudgeon approaches. And I love Zero Punctuation, I do, but Zero Punctuation is humor. I mean, yes, it's highly critical of certain games, but you sort of know that's Yahtzee's thing, and it's very tongue-in-cheek. You know, like, a lot of his stuff isn't, yeah, it's insulting, but it's sort of drawing on that whimsy. I mean, I laugh. I'm a huge Gears of War fan, but I laugh when it's like, you know, 4 guys who are brothers in arms, and that's all. Because that's funny, and that is pulling on, you know, elements in the game that the game itself played up, especially in Gears of War 2. So I'm good with that. I'm ashamed to admit that his Sims 3 video I watched multiple times and laughed my freaking ass off. It wasn't very complimentary to Sims fans or menstruating women, but it was funny. And Yahtzee's like this very smart id that is his little gremlin. You know, he's just good at that. But the problem is that things like that become successful. And I mean, I used to work for a brand. I still work with a brand, the Other Sock brand, that does the same thing to music videos. So I'm acutely aware of where the lines are and when something is in bounds as a joke, even if it's critical, and out of bounds, you know, not below, you know, if it's below the belt. And that's subjective, and that's more of a gut thing that comes from experience, and you get it wrong. You do get it wrong. Sometimes you do go too far, and it sucks when you do that. It does. You feel terrible when you found out that you hurt someone. People who are doing things as jokes never intend to hurt people. But there's this acute sensitivity. There's a war on jokes going on in gaming, and from a mental health perspective, that is frightening. Because humor it's a shield against despair. You know, it's a weapon of light in the darkness of depression. And because the thing a lot of people don't realize about depression is, you know, here's depression, right? There's this layer of anger that's kind of packing down on depression, and you have to get through that anger to get to a stable place, that place where things can be enjoyable again. And the problem is when people are going through that angry place, that's precisely when society goes, no, what is wrong with you? Why are you so angry? And that pushes them back down into depression and into despair. And I know it's tough. Nobody should have to deal with somebody ranting. It's never fun. But if somebody is, you know, if you're getting signs that somebody's dealing with depression, or you know, they've disclosed to you even, you have to understand that that's part of the process. There is sort of this anger lying as sort of like an eggshell around sort of the yoke of depression. And it's just, you gotta go through that. There's this period where someone is coming out of that and they're not repressing their feelings anymore, and they're finally dealing with the stuff that put them in that pit in the first place. There's gonna be anger. I mean, anger is one of the stages of grief, right? And we're so afraid of anger as a society. Oh my God, anger and aggression is bad, that we immediately squash that. And that's a real problem when someone's trying to get back on their feet. And you know, I've seen a lot of that. I was really disturbed by an article that The Verge tweeted today about, they were basically making fun of people who have sent nasty tweets to Anita Sarkeesian about how pathetic and sad their lives are. And lives are lives. And it didn't surprise me that the people that are poking Anita Sarkeesian with sticks are angry, sad, but what's mocking them doing? I mean, I guess it's good that it sort of shows that they're not. I'm not touching the credible threat argument. Bad. Back away, Leanna. Back away from no. No. I'm not touching it. But I mean, I don't like people who say nasty things to people online. I don't like calling myself a victim. I'm a target of it as well. Big bullseye on my head. See this sort of gape in my bank? See, here's a bullseye. Here's a bullseye where the nasty stuff happens. But I try to understand the anger because it hurts me less, and then I don't act like a jackass in response. I block people as a last resort. I mean, I blocked somebody today because I was talking about, my recovery from PTSD, and somebody decided to tweet, to me, you're still a crazy bitch. Well, that's just block. That's block because there's absolutely no entry point there. But, it's different when someone comes at me who is misinformed or, is clearly passionate about some issue, and is just not communicating it in a good way. I mean, it sucks because the more Twitter followers I get, the more I can't communicate with anybody, and I sort of feel like if I can get one person thinking about things in a healthier way, I've done my job for the day. But I can only spend so much time on Twitter. I mean, time's a limited resource, and I have to do other stuff, like these rambling videos. But I don't like blocking as a solution to being confronted with aggression. I don't think that rape or death threats are things that should be responded to. They're just... To me, that's just an empty Starbucks cup on the internet. It was something that consumed far too many resources, cost way too much, and at the end of that really brief slurp that it feels good and you get a jolt, well, what is it now? Now it's just garbage. Now it's just trees died for your $5 freaking latte. And that's how I feel like about that garbage on the internet. But, it sucks that because things are so polarized now, people are being fed some terrible information. And I don't want to judge them because of that information. And I want to clarify something right now to Gamergate people out here. I never said everyone in Gamergate was autistic. I don't know where that thing came from. It came from an article where I said there was a high rate of autism among the people who responded to the gamers are dead. I prefer to say gamers are over because people who say no one ever said gamers were dead, they're right. No one ever did say that, but that's what they become. The meme is the gamers are dead articles, but I said that there were a high number of autistic people among the people who, or people with autism, among the people who objected initially, and they're still going. I mean, at one point, one of the Chan boards was referring to Gamergate as weaponized autism, and that's when I sort of went, "Are you guys really autistic?" And it turned out a lot of them were, and I did surveys to make sure, and, people gave me the age of their diagnosis and the details about their conditions, and so I was reasonably confident to be able to make the statement there are a lot of people in Gamergate with autism. Somehow that became all of Gamergate is autistic, and that's the way the internet works. And so now I see people come at me on Twitter or say silly shitposty things on Reddit that I called all of Gamergate autistic. And there's a reason I don't post on Reddit, because it would just be this massive sinkhole of constantly fighting bad information. And I don't even want to start that. Because the problem is, if you respond to this comment and you don't respond to this comment, then people think you're confirming the comment you didn't respond to, even though it's just you don't have time to respond to every stupid rumor about you on the internet. the fact that there are a lot of autistic people within the Gamergate movement made me a lot more patient, because I was like, okay, this person might just be an asshole. They might be a person who has issues with socialization and trouble reading social cues. They may be having a socially inappropriate reaction to something I said. If they can't help it, I'm not going to condemn the person for something they can't help. And there's way too much of that in gaming right now. There is way too much instant condemnation. I mean, according to Gamergate, I'm a racist and I'm transphobic because I talked about colonization theory on the internet involving gaming, which meant there was this, there was this core group of gamers who pre-existed, and then this, influx of new players came in and went, hey, we're taking over, you're savages. That's what I meant, but they determined I was racist. Right. The transphobic one was even funnier. There's a Twitter account, a parody Twitter account called Cat Frequency that pushes felinism instead of feminism. And so, I was joking around because I do this thing called the Daily Momo, where I put up a daily picture of my cat Momo because he's cute and fluffy and people like it. And I started doing it because I thought it was the one thing. I thought cat pictures were the one thing that no one on the internet could get mad at. I was really wrong. People got really mad at cat pictures and were insulting to my face about it. People who knew me, people I thought were my friends, freaking insulted me over my cat. Not thinking people love their animals. And when you just go, oh, I can't stand that, you're taking away a bit of their happy. Like, what's wrong with you? Who asked you? It's a tweet. The half-life of a tweet is something like 8 minutes. Something ridiculous, right? So what if I post one picture of my cat every day? It's amazing how many people had a problem with this. Because everybody thinks that something as big and open as the internet should be calibrated precisely for them. And we have to find this balance, because too many people like, the internet is for me. And so they shut out any dissenting voices. They shut out any critique. I think people have to get better at critique, but we'll get there. I have seen improvements. But I just don't like blocking somebody based on a couple of 140 character exchanges that I can't be certain aren't just awkward instead of mean. And that's, I guess, my message regarding gaming and mental illness, is that if you are neurotypical, if you are, or if you're in a condition that you're in control of, or that you are symptom free from, like me, you have the responsibility of empathy, to give people who, you get a bit of a sense, like this person, you can tell when somebody's just being a jerk, and when someone's, because you can go to their mentions, like their timeline, and okay, is this person just an asshole and they troll everybody, or is this an outlier? If it's an outlier, could be autism, could be mental illness, could be people having just a bad day. And I don't want to be judged for my bad days. Like, God, I'm still getting crap from people over a series of tweets I posted while I was traumatically symptomatic, like I was having a PTSD issue. And it really sucks when you're in a press conference at a Galen Center and something on a screen makes you start hyperventilating and sweating in a room full of people you don't know. And I happened to be live tweeting that event. It affected my tweets. I will never live it down. Fortunately, I've gotten more control of that particular impulse now. I've learned what to do instead of what I did. But the internet never forgets. I can never make that go away. and I happened to offend a particularly nasty game fandom, it's forever colored my attitude of that series. I will not touch that franchise ever again. I will not touch the Witcher franchise because people were so awful to me about something that was said in a bad moment. I can't even talk to that person I was tweeting to, I was responding to a direct question about on Twitter anymore because people immediately dogpile. It's affected a friendship. And if I was less resilient, if I hadn't gotten a lot of trauma therapy, that could have had a really bad impact on me. And I mean, people see things like depression or anxiety or other conditions, what they may consider the mild end of mental health stuff, as it's considered disordered when you're given a diagnosis. With trauma, it's actually just a short-circuiting of the way the brain is supposed to work. Like trauma, PTSD comes from the fact you had to pack it down at the time. You had to just get it through. And so you block it off. And so it's almost like this mental backdraft where there's a fire behind that door. And you're constantly getting damaged because there's this fire still burning that you haven't dealt with. But life doesn't stop. And the longer you put off dealing with it, the worse the nightmares get, the worse, the flashbacks get. Even smells can do it to you. And it's not until you have the ability to face it's usually a series of traumas or an extended trauma. Those nightmares aren't going to stop. You have to face it head on. Those issues, that hit you without warning aren't going to stop. And the problem is we don't have a society right now that allows people the process. It took me about 1.5 years of actively working on it to get past. I mean, I think about those tweets I sent back, and it was only last June. And it's like, wow, what a difference. What a difference in my state of mind, what a difference in my life. And a lot of it was just getting rid of some people that were not good for me and were perpetuating the issue and were keeping me in that stuck state. And a lot of mental health is your social circle. It's unfortunate, and it sucks for people who don't have supportive families, people who don't have really good friends. A lot of people don't have friends anymore. They have networking connections because we're taught to network, and it's that thing of if somebody doesn't give you something, kick them to the curb. Well, that's commodification of friendships. And we've been trained to do this. I mean, the more work becomes contract-based and the fewer full-time with benefits and pension positions exist, this is only going to get worse. The commodification of humanity is only going to get worse. And I don't know why businesses do it. It seems short-term to me. It doesn't seem like the most cost-efficient thing in the long run because your employees burn out. Going back to that, crunch period thing I talked about before. It's an unsustainable system right now. And I don't believe in government intervention. I'm very libertarian. I want as few laws as possible. I don't want more regulations. I don't want more government intervention. I don't want more laws. Because you know what the problem with more laws is? They'll probably be as badly written as the laws we have now. And so many of the laws we have now are only partially enforceable because they're written so vague that it comes down to the interpretation of the cop, the DA, and the judge, and nothing to do with any, here's the rule, did it break the rule? Yeah, we have the same problem with Facebook's terms of service and Twitter's terms of service. All these laws are just cover your ass for some corporation or politician. They have nothing to do with actually wanting to keep people safe and healthy. So what we have left is community. And that community starts with every single one of us, every single choice we make when we interact with people on a daily basis. What we choose to put on Twitter, what we choose to put on Facebook, what we choose to put on YouTube, and YouTube comments, and Instagram, and any footprint you put online, you know, can be a prod or trying to smash someone's face with a karate chop. And that's up to you. That's your choice. And it doesn't matter what situation you are going through, that is your choice. You know? And it is, you are in control. And that's one of the most important things in getting mentally healthy, is recognizing that you do have control. That's the big mantra with trauma counseling, is get control back, get control back. What's it going to take to get control back? Because it's that feeling that you're out of control. And I think that, you know, depression's the same way in a lot of ways. You feel like you have no control over your life. And it's never going to get better because you don't have the mechanisms to make it better. Anxiety is the same way. You're constantly trying to ward off this evil force. I think if we were better to each other, a lot of these situations would improve, because we wouldn't have the justifiable fear of something swerving and you know, sideswiping us and knocking our life out of whack for the foreseeable future. It's too many times people get knocked down in modern economic realities and can't get back up. And recognizing that isn't necessarily a disorder, but it sure doesn't make you functional. So, I mean, where do we go here? Because there's you know, the people that are hurling insults at cosplayers aren't going to be part of the solution, but the rest of us can be, you know. And I really believe in community change. I really believe that if you and your friend and their friend and their friend and their friend make a commitment to just being more decent to people, then we can do a lot of good. Not as individuals. And people like, I'm small, what can I do? I'm a nobody. No, you can be a somebody to somebody. You know, somebody said today, you can't save everybody, but you can save some people. Save what you can. You know, be a collection of tiny positive forces instead of negative ones. That's all it takes. And if someone's struggling, for God's sakes, it takes nothing on you to just check in on them and say, hey, how you doing? And not talk about their issue unless they want to talk. Just talk to them like a person. Because when you're going through therapy, trust me, you want to get away from it sometimes. You're tired of it constantly being a grind and everything constantly being, oh, I have to rewire this, and it constantly being hard. You want moments that it's just easy. And sometimes just having a conversation about nonsense. That's all it takes. And a lot of the stuff I see people reacting to on Twitter, oh, transphobic or racist or sexist or whatever, it's just people screwing around. I think if you'd actually ask them, they'd be like, no, I didn't really mean that. It was just a stupid joke and I was intending to be offensive because that's why it was funny. Because, wow, anybody really thinks this? Really? I've gotten that a lot. People actually think that? Yeah. People actually think some ridiculous stuff. But a lot of those people have euphemisms for it and gestures and unsaid things to cover up their bigotry. A lot of people that, you know, make stupid jokes are making stupid jokes. And it's important to know the difference. And I think too many people are being just dismissed because other people who also have issues they're not facing are going, look what wonderful people we are. We have squashed these evil goblins on the internet. So, what, that person you squashed was a real human being. Good job. Good job. You are such a humanitarian. You just shut somebody out who might have actually been looking for validation from you through anger. I know that's a weird concept, but I've had to learn a lot more people take me seriously than I thought, and I'm like, oh, good God, that's a lot of responsibility. But that means some people are going to be, how could you do that to me? And it's like, what did I do? I don't know. I didn't mean to do anything to you directly, but please tell me the details of what I did so I can try to figure out what I can do for you. You know, if you just, I don't like what you did, or you're transphobic. That tells me nothing. That tells me nothing. You guys are so in love with the term problematic. Use it. Tell me what the problematic statement was, because otherwise you're just using it to dismiss me, and that's not kind. That's not justice. There's nothing just about just dismissing a person. For God's sakes, that's freaking elitism. And that's what so-called, organized social justice movements have become. They become elitist. And we have to stop that, because there's a lot of good that can be done at the community level without laws, without lawmakers, without government intervention, because, oh God, government intervention just screws things up. But a lot of companies wait for government regulation because they get no positives from being self-started. People just think it's cynical shilling no matter what they do, so they wait until they have to, because that's the path of least resistance. And the path of least resistance goes right to the bottom. So I believe in gamers. I believe in the gaming community. I believe that those of us that are not elitists, that are populists, true populists, can take this back, and we can do it together, just by leading by example. So once again, I went longer than I thought, but people are actually hanging in on these things. I guess people are listening to it as podcasts or something like that. But anyway, thanks for listening. If you retweet this, please retweet it with the Bell Let's Talk hashtag for the next few hours until tomorrow. I don't know, whenever January 29th is, where you are. But thanks for listening, and thanks for caring, because caring is an active thing. Just caring makes the world better. So thanks, guys. Yoda says bye too. Talk like Yoda. It's therapeutic. Okay, bye.